They thought they ended me with a shove. No scream, no scuffle, just a hand against my back, a moment of weightlessness, and then the sound of gravel skidding into the void. That was supposed to be it. No rescue, no trace, just a drop sharp enough to erase a person clean from the story. But what they didn't realize, what they never understood, is that special operations doesn't teach you how to fall. It teaches you how to climb. I wasn't falling. I was climbing. My name is Major Kara Merrin, and this is how I turned a mountain in northern Albania into a war zone. It started as a joint coalition logistics survey. At least, that's what the mission docket claimed. A 6-day mapping op with a mix of NATO and private contractors to review transport routes along the southern corridor. My assignment: liaison officer and topographical analyst. Fancy title for making sure the terrain didn't eat our convoy. That evening, dusk had already begun to stretch its fingers across the rugged cliffs. We were following a goat trail of a path no wider than a bike tire, tracing a sheer rock face high above the tree line. I'd paused, squinting against the wind, tracing altitude lines on my wrist pad. That's when the quiet hit. The wrong kind. It wasn't the hush of focused movement. It was the silence that coils before a strike. A heartbeat before betrayal. I turned, too late. The push came like a jolt of lightning across my spine. No warning. No sound but the scuff of boots and my gear catching air. I didn't scream. There wasn't time. My arms lashed out, and by some mercy, I caught a jagged lip no wider than my wrist. My body slammed into the cliffside, shoulder, hip, knee, everything. The ledge caught me like a jagged slap from the mountain itself. I didn't fall. I shattered. I lay flat, half of me hanging in space. Blood stung my left eye, and the horizon spun. Above, laughter drifted down like falling ash. "Think she made it," one of the men said, tone too casual. "Nah, nobody climbs that without gear." Boots shuffled. Gravel scattered. Then nothing. They thought I was gone. That was their first mistake. I was bloodied, disoriented, and my side screamed with broken ribs, but I was alive. One boot gone, pistol missing, rope half-coiled at my belt. But the blade was still there, clipped to my calf. The one I named Ashfall, forged in memory of a failed op that cost me 2 friends and left a burn scar down my left side. I breathed in through my nose, fighting the vertigo. The sky above me dimmed, stars creeping into the cold. I didn't cry. I didn't curse. I checked my gear with one hand and whispered to the stone beneath me, "You should have finished the job." Then I started climbing. The mountain didn't care that I was bleeding. It didn't care I'd been betrayed or that my ribs screamed with every inch upward. It was indifferent, cold, ageless, and I was going to beat it. I tested each limb. Right hand, stable. Left arm trembling, but usable. My leg was the worst. Torn muscle or maybe a fracture, the whole thigh pulsing like a second heart. But it bent. It moved. That was enough. I shifted my weight carefully, boots scraping stone, and locked my fingers into the next crack in the wall. My gloves were shredded within the first 3 feet, leaving skin against granite. Didn't matter. I needed friction more than I needed flesh. 10 feet up, I saw it, a glint in the fading light. A bolt embedded deep in the rock, rusted but solid. Old-school military climbing anchor, Cold War era by the look of it. I almost laughed. I'd read about this line in a dusty field manual back in Vicenza. No one used it anymore. Too dangerous, too steep. Perfect for ghosts. I unclipped the climbing cord from my belt, tied off with one hand, and started the brutal ascent. Inch by inch, finger by finger. My boots slid more than once, forcing me to wedge my forearm into a crack or drive my knee into a seam just to stay upright. The pain kept time. Pulse, pull, burn. Pulse, pull, burn. This wasn't an escape. This was a reckoning. I wasn't just getting out. I was going to find out why 3 men I'd shared rations and firelight with had tried to erase me from the story. When I finally crested the ridge, I didn't collapse. I went still, face to the dirt, lungs heaving quietly, ear pressed to the soil, listening. And there it was. Laughter. 100 meters through the trees, flickering firelight danced against the trunks. Voices rose and fell, men speaking freely, relaxed, drunk even. No one was watching their perimeter. That was mistake number 2. I belly crawled up a slight rise and peered over the edge. What I saw turned my blood to ice. It wasn't a NATO forward outpost. It was a black market staging camp, crates stacked in rows, weapons under tarps, fake medical labels slapped on smuggled arms. I recognized the gear. Coalition supplied. Supposedly earmarked for relief distribution. They weren't just dirty. They were buried in it. I ducked down and pulled out the shortwave mic clipped to my collar. Static. Broken, but the internal battery still held a trickle of life. I switched it to scan and caught a voice. Low, smug. Confirmed. She went over. No movement. That's a coffin drop. I closed my eyes and swallowed bile. They hadn't checked. They hadn't needed to. Because in their minds, I was already bones cooling on stone. And that was their third mistake. They thought gravity had done their dirty work. They thought the mountain would bury the evidence for them. They didn't expect me to survive. They damn sure didn't expect me to come back with a plan. I moved like vapor, slow, deliberate, shaping my body around the terrain, letting the branches swallow me. No moon. Just the red flicker of the campfire and the silhouettes of traders illuminated by it. 6 men. 3 I knew by name. The rest were part of something bigger. One of them paced near the truck, an old NATO transport model, tail sagging under the weight of crates. From this angle, I could see the labels. Humanitarian aid. Winter relief. Inside, modified rifles. Frag grenades. Blood money, painted to look like mercy. I pressed tighter against the earth, letting the pine needles mask my scent and sound. You load the rest before dawn, one of the men muttered. Convoy hits the checkpoint at 0600. After that, we're ghosts. Not all of us, another said. What if someone finds the body? There won't be a body. They laughed. I didn't. I was already circling the outer edge of the camp, eyes mapping blind spots, fuel drums, patrol gaps. No guard rotation. No flares. No calm discipline. They were cocky, sloppy, mercenaries fed off arrogance and the silence of the dead. But I wasn't dead. I dropped low beside a stack of crates and examined the nearest one. A clipboard was clipped to the side, half buried under plastic sheeting. I slid it free and flipped it open. Transit routes, key codes, shipping manifests, and there, tucked into the side pocket, a photograph. Me, taken from a long lens 3 days ago. Standing outside the coalition tent in Tirana, coffee in hand, reading a weather report. Someone had been watching me long before the push. The realization cut deeper than any fall. This wasn't spontaneous. This was planned. They didn't shove me because I got in the way. They embedded with me because I was in the way. I eased back behind the crates and scanned the perimeter again. Fuel barrels stacked near the back flap of the supply tent. Bad placement. Terrible oversight. The kind that invites disaster. And tonight, I'd deliver. From my thigh pouch, I pulled a thin strip of det cord, standard, waterproof, silent. I looped it between the barrels, nested a friction primer into the last one, and ran a line back toward the treeline. This wouldn't be an inferno. It would be a statement. I moved next toward the truck. One man was dozing against the wheel, his boots off, rifle across his lap. I stepped silently beside him, hand across his mouth, blade to his neck. 6 seconds. No struggle. His body eased to the ground, eyes still open in disbelief. I didn't waste time with sentiment. I took his comm pack, his belt, left the rifle, and vanished into the night. They'd wake up soon. They'd scream. They'd shout. And I'd be waiting. Because I wasn't hunting them for justice. I was hunting them for every person who trusted a badge and got betrayal instead. I waited until just past midnight. The highland wind cut through the trees like a blade. Cold, clean. It sharpened me. At the edge of the ridge, I crouched low beside a crumbling outcrop. Below, the camp flickered with firelight, muffled voices, and the occasional clang of metal. I could see the flicker of movement inside the supply tent. Someone restacking crates, maybe taking inventory before the final push. I pulled the lighter from my vest. Old issue, stormproof, scratched with initials that weren't mine. I'd picked it up in Mosul. The operator it belonged to hadn't made it out. I sparked the friction primer. Then I ran. The blast wasn't huge, just loud. One fuel drum burst into flame, fast and sharp, like a slap to the face. Smoke curled upward, lit orange by licking tongues of fire. And then, panic. Shouting erupted across the camp. Men scrambling from tents, rifles raised, eyes wild. "She's alive," someone yelled. "No way. Nobody climbs out of that." Then who the hell did this? They were unraveling, exactly as I'd planned. Fear is louder than gunfire when you aim it right. I slid back through the trees, breath steady, muscles coiled. Two were already moving toward the blast site, weapons low, vision narrow. That was the problem with mercs. They train for targets, not ghosts. I looped toward the far side of camp where the satellite uplink sat, isolated, shielded under camo netting. Two guards posted out front, but their attention was behind them, toward the smoke. Rookie mistake. I slipped between the trees, slid a blade into the canvas wall, and stepped inside. The comms rig was better than I expected, multiband, encrypted, powerful. I pulled the sniffer from my belt, clipped it to the terminal, and watched as it cloned their traffic logs. Everything, messages, call signs, frequencies, payouts. In 20 seconds, I had a full dump. In 30, I had it uploaded to a secure relay tied to naval intelligence back in Naples. Even if I didn't make it out, the truth would. Voices shouted outside. Perimeter sweep now. She's playing us. She's just one woman. I smiled. They were still underestimating me. Back in the trees, I circled wide, rigging 2 snares along the upper path. Simple pressure release traps with climbing cord. Crude, but effective. And then I set the final bait. One clear boot print in the dirt, leading to the cliff trail. Obvious. Too obvious. But I knew their type. Hunters, not thinkers. And fear makes even smart men predictable. Sure enough, within minutes I heard it. The snap of cord, the scream, the panicked gunshot. One of them had gone flying, pulled up into the trees like a carcass. Another emptied a magazine into the shadows. Where is she? She's everywhere. I keyed the stolen radio and dropped my voice an octave. You didn't kill a soldier, I said. You unchained her. Then I cut the line. By the time the last echoes of the gunfire faded, they were broken. Half the camp was huddled near the main fire, eyes wide, rifles clutched like talismans. The others were out in the trees, stumbling over roots and shadows, yelling into the night like scared kids telling ghost stories to keep their fear company. I stayed low, silent, always moving. They thought I was everywhere, but I was just in the right places. I crawled back to the ridge and paused. My shoulder ached with every movement, blood stiffening the fabric of my sleeve. The climb had torn more than just flesh. It had peeled back something older, something raw, a version of me I hadn't felt in years. Not since Marja. Not since the Kandahar evac. I checked my gear. 1 blade. 1 shortwave unit. Half a strip of pain suppressants. And one purpose. Major Stefan Rutger, head of this op, former coalition logistics officer, now moonlighting as a black market kingpin, was somewhere in that camp. I'd served beside him once. Trusted him. Drank coffee with him at a forward base while mortars thudded in the hills. He pushed me. Not just physically off that ridge. Strategically. Bureaucratically. Intentionally. Because I'd seen too much. I slipped past a stuttering perimeter sensor, sloppily rigged, and ducked beside a pile of crates stacked under tarps. There it was again, false labels. Food rations packed with modded drone tech. Satellite relays disguised as climate monitors. They weren't smuggling arms. They were moving surveillance and signal gear. This was bigger than war profiteering. This was intelligence laundering. I froze as 2 men walked past, arguing. She's still out there. I don't care what the others say. It was supposed to be clean. She was just the analyst. No analyst climbs out of a drop like that. They didn't know I was 10 feet from them. When they moved on, I crept into the command tent. No guards. No movement. Inside, the glow of a field tablet lit the dark. Maps. Convoy routes. Encryption keys. But what made my stomach turn was the folder marked Clearance A13. I opened it. And there I was again. Not just photos, memos. Reports. Names of whistleblowers flagged in logistics reports across the Balkans. They weren't just trying to kill me. They were trying to cut out the link between their op and the coalition's data chain. I copied everything. Then I slid outside and stood face to face with Major Rutger. He looked older, weather-beaten, rifle slung across his chest, cigar clenched between yellowed teeth. His eyes narrowed. Well, he said, you're a ghost after all. I didn't smile. You should have checked the ledge, I replied. The fire behind Rutger cast long shadows across his face, cutting his features into sharp angles. He looked at me like he couldn't decide whether to shoot or smirk. You were supposed to be a pencil pusher, he said. And you were supposed to be a soldier. I shot back. He chuckled, dry and cold. Always the moral one, huh, Kara? Always playing hero. You think this op started with you? No, I said. But it's going to end with you. In his left hand, he held a sidearm. Casual grip, but ready. I didn't flinch. My knife was still in my hand, close enough to gut him before he could raise it. We circled each other slowly, just outside the ring of firelight. Around us, the camp had fallen deathly still. Men crouched in the dark, unsure of who to fear more, me or their commander. I let the silence stretch. "You can't stop it," he muttered. "This machine's bigger than both of us. Then I'll start by dismantling you." He lunged first, fast for his size. I stepped inside the swing, caught his wrist, and twisted. His elbow buckled, and the pistol dropped. We grappled, boots skidding on gravel, breath hot and ragged. He slammed a knee into my injured thigh, and I nearly went down. But I'd learned to weaponize pain. I head-butted him, then drove my knife into the ground beside his head as he hit the dirt, pinned. His breathing hitched, mouth twisted with rage. I could have ended it there. Instead, I pulled the rope from his pack, his own climbing line, and bound his wrists and ankles with the knots he used to teach recruits to escape from. He wasn't going anywhere. I leaned close, my voice low but sharp. "When you throw a soldier off a mountain," I said, "you better make damn sure she doesn't climb back up." His lip curled, but he didn't speak. Cowardice comes quiet when cornered. I dragged him toward the center of camp, where the others had gathered like stunned spectators. Nobody moved. Nobody challenged me. They didn't see an analyst anymore. They saw a reckoning. I fired a flare straight into the sky, red smoke curling like a warning across the black. I'd mapped this moment 2 nights ago when I still believed I'd be going home by convoy. A coalition patrol was scheduled to pass through the eastern valley. They'd see the flare if they were on time. They'd know what it meant. And they'd come. The flare's hiss died into silence, but the red trail lingered, painting the mountain sky like a bloodstain. Around me, the camp had gone still. I stood in the open, knife in one hand, Rutgers comm tablet in the other. My body felt like it was stitched together with pain, every breath a measured gamble. But I stood. That was enough. The mercenaries didn't move. Not toward me. Not toward each other. Their leader was bound and bleeding at my feet. Their supplies smoldered in a fire sparked by their own carelessness. Their secrets were no longer secret. And they knew it. 20 minutes passed. Maybe more. Then I heard it. The low, rhythmic hum of rotors thumping against the mountain air. They came in low, Coalition Blackhawk, matte black, belly grazing treetop height. I stepped back from the clearing, raising my arms slowly as it descended. Wind from the blades scattered pine needles and ash like confetti over a ruined parade. 2 soldiers fast roped down, rifles up, scanning the scene with confusion tightening their brows. Their eyes found me, bloodied, filthy, smoke-smudged, and widened. "Major Merrin?" one called out. I nodded once, voice flat. "Alive. Uncooperative prisoner in tow." I shoved Rutger forward. He stumbled, but didn't speak. The soldier closest to me cuffed him, eyes flicking down to the shredded coalition insignia still clinging to his jacket sleeve. "You were listed as Kia," the younger of the 2 said quietly. I handed him the tablet. "Well, report updated. That contains a full dump of encrypted comms, fake manifest routes, and their buyer's ledger. You'll want to send it straight to the Oversight Task Force in Brussels." He flipped through the files, eyes widening as he scanned payout logs, encryption keys, even images of crates marked as aid but packed with kill drones. "This," he muttered, "this blows half our logistics out of the water." "That's the point," I said. Behind me, some of the mercenaries tried to melt into the trees, but the second Blackhawk was already descending. This time with 5 more soldiers, armed, ready, scanning with practiced efficiency. The net closed fast. Within 5 minutes, the camp was locked down. Weapons were stacked. Survivors cuffed. Tents searched and gear tagged. It looked like a military sweep, but I saw the confusion on their faces. They weren't briefed on what this was. They probably thought it was an equipment mishap, maybe a misfiled report. Another paper-pushed embarrassment swept under coalition carpet. But the truth was standing right in front of them, bruised and breathing. I stepped toward the lead chopper, legs heavy but heart calm. It wasn't over, but it was ending. As I climbed aboard, one of the soldiers behind me asked, "How did you survive that drop?" I didn't turn. "Because I didn't fall," I said. I climbed. The Blackhawk lifted, blades cutting through the alpine morning like a saw through silence. I sat near the open bay door, legs stiff, gauze wrapping both hands. shoulder held together with quick seal mesh from the medic's field kit. Below, the ridge fell away. The same ridge they tried to throw me off. Now just another scar on the landscape. And in some ways, a scar inside me. Rutger sat cuffed and slouched against the bulkhead, his mouth taped shut, arms twisted awkwardly behind his back. He kept glancing at me, eyes dark with calculation. He wasn't looking for sympathy. He was looking for a way out. But I wasn't offering any. The 4 crates we'd recovered were strapped down tight across from us. I watched them sway with the chopper's rhythm. Proof that the op I stumbled into was far more than a rogue sale or a few bad actors. This was systemic, layered, hidden inside coalition supply chains like rot inside wood. The comms tech on board handed me a headset. Colonel Adler wants to speak to you. Priority channel. I took it without a word. Kara, Adler's voice rasped over static. We got your packet. I won't ask how you survived, just that I'm damn glad you did. Requesting full forensic lock on Rutger and his entire chain, I said. My voice was hoarse but level. He didn't act alone. We've already got Brussels leaning on Task Force Echo. Logistics Command is scrambling to explain half a dozen discrepancies you just blew open. I didn't respond right away. I watched the ridge fade behind us, the trees shrinking, the bloodstains becoming dirt again. You think this ends with him? I asked quietly. No, Adler said. But it started with you. There was a pause. You'll be debriefed the moment you hit base. Cleaned up, cleared, reassigned. You'll get your pick of billets after this. I don't want reassignment. He hesitated. What do you want? I looked at the crates. At Rutger. At the soldiers across from me who still didn't know the full truth. I want this story to stick, I said. I want the brass who signed off on those fake manifests to feel the heat. I want the system that let Rutger operate like this burn to the ground. There was another long pause. I'll do what I can, Adler said. But you know how deep this goes. Then I'll dig deeper. The channel went quiet. I handed the headset back and leaned against the fuselage, letting the cold steel press against my back. I'd survived the fall, but that didn't mean the mission was over. The moment we touched down at the base in Vicenza, I was pulled into a whirlwind of questions, cameras, and cold stares. Some looked at me like I was a miracle, others like I was a threat. They were both right. They put me in a holding room first, sterile walls, old air, a single mirror that wasn't just a mirror. 2 guards outside, a debrief officer across from me. Nameplate read Lieutenant Seeger, but I recognized the posture. Legal, not tactical. You've had quite a week, Major Merrin. Depends which side of the mountain you're standing on. He didn't smile. You'll need to make a formal statement for the inquiry board. Your report triggered 4 internal investigations. Coalition Logistics Command is under scrutiny, and someone high up is very uncomfortable with how much you uncovered. Good, I said. He leaned forward, sliding a dossier across the table. Inside, photos of the camp, labeled maps, logs of Rutger's known movements over the last 6 months. But what hit me hardest was a transcript. My name, my location, my movements. Flagged months ago. You were right, Seeger said. You didn't just stumble into this. You were placed. They tracked your access history, noticed the red flags you raised in those reports. Rutger didn't panic. He planned. And the others? The 3 that pushed me? Private contractors, all under false credentials. Their last known activity was that mission. Their employers have gone dark. I leaned back. So, they disappear, and I carry the burden. He tilted his head. Isn't that what you do? I didn't answer. Because the truth was, yes. That's what I do. Carry the burden. Climb through it. Turn it into something sharp enough to cut back. I spent 6 hours in that room. Then 3 more in a medical tent. Another day in silence as brass moved behind closed doors, deciding how much of this could be sanitized, hidden, repackaged for press releases. But they couldn't bury it. I'd already uploaded the files to 2 external intel relays. Sent encrypted packets to watchdog journalists and oversight officers I trusted. There would be no erasing this. They tried to kill me. Now I was the loudest survivor they'd ever failed to silence. Still, not everyone was happy. A week later, I stood outside a steel conference room waiting to speak before the tribunal assigned to investigate the leak. One of the junior officers tried to make eye contact. Failed. They didn't want to see me. They wanted this over. Inside, I laid it all out. The climb, the betrayal, the bodies, the ledger, the voice recordings. And when I was done, I left the room in silence, not waiting for their response. Because I already had mine. 2 months passed. Most of it was silence. No medals. No ceremony. Just paperwork, security reviews, and late-night calls from people who wanted my story, sanitized, softened, shaped into something palatable. I turned them all down. This wasn't for public glory. It was for every operator who'd ever gotten a bullet to the back from the wrong direction. Every analyst silenced because they flagged something that didn't fit the narrative. Every training accident that was anything but. Rucker was gone now. Discharged, disgraced, awaiting trial behind military wire in an off-grid site near Aviano. They wouldn't let him testify in public. Not yet. Too much risk. He'd name names not ready to be named. But the files I'd recovered were already doing their work. 2 coalition contractors blacklisted. A dozen supply routes frozen. 3 senior officers suddenly retired. Quiet waves in high places. Not enough. But a start. They offered me reassignment. A quiet desk job in Brussels, or a training billet at NAS Sigonella. Safe. Dignified. I refused both. Instead, I chose cold air and open ground. I found myself back in the Carpathians, where the trees stood like sentries and the cliffs reminded me why I kept climbing. I wasn't there for closure. I was there for memory. I hiked the ridge alone. No convoy, no unit, just boots on rock and silence in my chest. I found the ledge where I'd landed, jagged and narrow, now streaked with moss. I crouched there, fingertips brushing the stone like an old scar. This is where they tried to end me. And this is where I began again. Above me, the same granite face I clawed my way up. Below, the same black drop into pine. I turned toward the wind, closed my eyes, and whispered, still standing. Not for vengeance, not even for justice, but for truth. Because in this line of work, there are 2 kinds of falls. The ones you don't get up from, and the ones you do. And when you do, the ones who pushed you will spend the rest of their lives wondering how. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.